Hey, and welcome to Mom Talk. I'm Jen.
And I'm Tanya.
And today I'm drinking Coffee Crisp decaf coffee.
Yeah, and I'm having toasted coconut, which is very yummy.
Is it?
Yeah, we
Can
like.
I smell it?
Yeah, it's kind of fun having coffee, and we went to a local coffee shop, Pick and Brew, and got to pick out some samples and stuff so that we have them for Mom Talk to try them out.
Yes,
and yummy decaf ones too.
So many yummy decafs because I love flavored coffee, but tend to find the really blah, boring decafs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm super excited.
Yeah, this tastes really yummy.
I'm not a coconut person, so
I'll have both of them. I got two of each kind, but I'll have both of them.
definitely. Then I can have both the creme brulees. No.
Yes, you can. I might take a sip though.
Anyway, so I thought I'd start. Last week we didn't talk about my youngest son Jack and what we've been working on with his behavior management. So I thought we'd do an update today. So here's a copy of the book I've been using, and this week
it's a big one this week. We glanced over quickly, but so I have to break it down into steps a little bit. So
yes.
We don't get
So step 1 was spending quality time.
Mm-hmm.
Step 2 was giving like short commands and kind of breaking up what they're doing so that they are able to stop and obey.
I forgot to mention that we've actually been receiving feedback of families and moms who are actually trying this at home with their younger ones, and so that was really cool and a great reminder for us to be like, yes, we need to talk about Jack again. So
yes, and if you're finding things are working or whatever, I'd love to hear, because I won't feel like I'm in this alone. So feedback is always great.
Or the fact that you look at this and you're like, oh my goodness, this is a heavy week. So
I just said to my husband, we might be on this one for a number of weeks.
And that's okay.
Yes. So step 3 is giving more effective commands. So things like, when you say it, you need to make sure you mean it. You're not giving idle threats. Like
follow through.
Say what you mean and mean what you say.
Not that you don't get on the bus, you're never going to do this and this again. The nevers those are big, because how can you follow through with that, right?
Like, yes. Yeah. And being firm and direct, one instruction at a time, turning off the distractions when, like, so turn off the TV before you give them the instructions. Mm-hmm. So it encourages eye contact, which I understand isn't fit for every child, depending on where.
They have exceptionalities or something. You're not going to force a child, but for sure.
But if the child is able to, then eye contact is super helpful for both me and the child.
And teaches active listening and everything as well, right? So
absolutely. Yeah. Reducing the distractions, having the child repeat the command, and then setting deadlines so they know when they're supposed to have it done by. And then it suggests if the kids are old enough to make like chore cards, so that you're like, hey, you have to clean your room. Here's what it looks like. And it has all the steps so that they're not just like, but my room is such a mess. What do I do?
So I feel like you would actually be really good at coming up with the chore cards.
Yeah.
That has never been my strength. I have recently made up a chart for their morning jobs, because Micah was like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, same thing every morning, dude, but sure.
Right.
So I made up a chart, and it for a few days has worked, and we'll hold on to that. But it's not my strength to do chore cards. I feel like you would be all over that, whereas I like the other things. I'm like, I get that.
When I first was reading it, I thought it said chore chart, and I'm not really big into chore charts, like, because I often like forget the wall or whatever.
Yeah, until you bump into it.
But I do like the idea of the card, right?
Yes,
because my kids do that all the time. Like, they're like, James is standing in the kitchen, and I'm like, help clean up the kitchen, and he's like, but I don't know what to do. I'm like, the counter, the dishes, the floor, that like,
there's so much.
Something.
Come on now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have lots to work on about.
Is there anything
commands
from that list that you recognize you do already? There's stuff that I recognize that you do already.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I have the kids repeat the command back.
There's another one.
Eye contact?
Eye contact, not necessarily like when you're ever having the connection. So it might not be that first step, but you are still very good at getting on their eye level, like to eye level, and to like looking them in the eye. Like you are good at that. I've seen you do that lots. So
I am much better at being firm, direct, saying, like, meaning what I say with other people's kids. I definitely struggle with that.
I get that.
With my own kids, and tend to just escalate to this, like, screaming, like, you have to obey me now!
Yes.
Which is awful. And when I'm doing it, I'm, like, inside I'm crying, like, you're such a failure. And so...
It's,
one step at a time.
One step at a time. And I think, but it's good to know that you do some of those things already.
Yeah.
And then focus on maybe the things that aren't always the strength. And I find like, was it in there about the consequences? Like, did we talk about that, or is that later?
I don't know. Not really.
But I guess the idle threats or whatever, right? But
yeah.
So like instead of turning to the idle threats, having something set up ahead of time. Do you remember when I just remember this with Cadence? I had it in my phone. Like if she gave me a dirty look, this was the consequence. If she talked back to me, this was the consequence. If she did this, and I had it right there, and I think I at one point had it on my fridge so that like Brian and I were on the same page, and that was super helpful.
Yeah,
it was super helpful to have like.
Yeah, we definitely made a list like that, but we don't always follow through.
But it was helpful for a month. No, but it actually,
that's fair.
It was really helpful for us, and it was, even if it's a month or whatever, it was enough for those behaviors to decrease. I've tried so many things, and I think that's, to keep trying and refreshing is good.
Yes.
And important, and being okay if it falls or whatever, but keep trying. And not everything, but like that I tried with the console, it did work for a while. So yay. It worked for a bit.
Yeah, when you, like, that means that for that time period, you felt successful, your child felt successful, like...
Yeah. So I think it's important, and something that I'm wondering if I should bring back with Micah a little bit. So, yeah. So how are you feeling about that? I know it's a lot.
I think it'll be good, especially, like, looking at it going, oh, I'm not going to master this in 1 week. Yeah. Like, that makes me feel good, because I can just kind of... be mindful about it over the next couple of weeks and see if I can make some improvement. Absolutely. Because I would really like to stop screaming and losing my mind. Mm-hmm. One of the words that I have for the year is peace. And I've been really trying hard to be intentional about bringing peace to my life, peace to my home, peace to... my mind, and so it's interesting because the last 3 months I've definitely fallen into different areas where I'm like, okay, this is not a peaceful area. How can we make steps towards bringing more peace into that area?
I'm not sure if I told you about the time where I don't know where we were, and I was saying, like, I'm not really a yeller, and I said, like, right, Cadence, and she was like, well, I almost made you spew.
Through the nose.
That's amazing. She was just like, I was like, what? You get afraid I'm going to yell at you? No, I'm joking. But I was thinking of like screaming, and I don't scream at them. But yes, I do yell and raise my voice. So.
I raise my voice, and Renee acts like I'm yelling, and I'm like, you realize this is not.
I could go to here, but I have a video to show you though.
Okay.
Do you like my last week's one, right?
I did like your video last week.
Okay, here we go.
My 3-year-old was refusing to eat her dinner, so I started letting her watch Cocomelon on my phone while I spoon-feed her. I have a master's in educational psychology, and I've been working with kids for over 15 years. There's no manual for parenting. You're doing a great job.
Right?
I love that.
I thought that was really good, and actually really appropriate to what we were just talking about. Like, so true. Like, teacher, child and youth worker, I can't do a chart. Like there's things like we know this, and you're saying those things. It's like, yes, of course, but it's
well,
hard.
Home life is so different, right? Like when I'm at work, I feel like there's a lot of structure, and it's just a different situation. Where when you're as soon as you are at home, it's just, I think it's the same thing. Like, people will talk about how, like, kids will, like, have meltdowns around you because you're their safe place. Well, I think it's kind of the same thing for me. Like,
Absolutely.
my home is my safe place.
So you just kind of let that guard down.
Yes. Where when I'm at work, I'm constantly like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm on.
Yeah.
And then when you're at home, it's just like...
And then there's always different things. Like, even I think of Brian, like, he never was really around kids. He was nervous to become a dad. And, like, so I would come and share these ideas of, like, different, like, things, and he'd be like, oh, that's kind of weird. And now he does them better than I do. I'm like,
he's such a great dad.
Oh, man. I'm like, oh, he got it. And so, like, it's not something that an education or can like, maybe prepare you a little bit, but that doesn't give any guarantee. You can have somebody who wasn't around kids at all, never was interested or anything, and they're excelling or they're still struggling. So, like, just learning from each other and whatever. So this is right after Cadence was born. I was still in my third year child and youth worker, and I was struggling postpartum. She was 3 weeks old, and I remember crying in the shower saying to Brian, I'm supposed to like kids. Because even for that 3 weeks of, like, that adjustment to, like, not sleeping and all of that stuff felt so overwhelming. And he's like, you do like kids. You will like kids. It will be okay. But in that moment of pure emotion, right? So
I totally get that.
Our expectations don't always meet what reality is, but it's what we do with it and keep trying and learning.
Yes,
for sure. So I had mentioned this week about triggers, and I don't know about you guys at home or you, Jen, but I have noticed, so Cadence is a lot like Brian, and Micah is a lot like me, equaling sensitivity and all of that fun stuff. So Cadence, when she used to, like, about Micah's age now, when she used to cry or get upset, Brian would get really frustrated really quickly with her. And I tended to have that more, like, patient, like, okay, no, like, let's work through this. Not always, you know. But Micah, he gets super sensitive and whines and cries so easily. If you see him on the street, please do not tell him this to his face. But he gets so emotional so quickly. And inside me, just like trigger, like, stress, immediately stress response. And I'm like, and I just start, like, feeling, like, panicky. And I had mentioned to you, and you said it's interesting, or something like this.
Yeah.
It's interesting that, like, with Brian's really good with me, and how he's really good with Micah, and I can be more supportive in those moments with Cadence. I just found that interesting,
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah.
Do you have that with any of your kids?
I have a bit of, like, blinders to the things that the kids do that I also do.
Okay.
So I don't always notice it. Other people will notice it and bring it to my attention.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know when it's brought to my attention, I'm like, oh yeah, I do that. Yeah, that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I know how everyone else feels.
Well, and I didn't, like, I don't remember whining or necessarily, like visibly crying over a lot of things as a kid. But
No,
I pushed it
very
down.
like,
extremely sensitive.
Yeah.
Still very sensitive. Like, I couldn't watch any scary movies. Still to this day, I can't. Like, it just brings me right in. Like, I thought Dennis the Menace was really scary as a kid because there's the person walks by and he's like, here's an apple, and the guy's scary, and like, yeah, I'm very, very, very sensitive.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Renee is very good at remembering facts and things, and will often correct when it's not.
That's so cute.
And that's very, very
all
neat.
her life.
But it irks
all
me.
my life.
It irks me so much. But then I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And I always, and like, what I have to remind myself is when I do it, I feel like I'm not correcting, but I'm passing along information, right? Like to help someone. And I think that that's probably where Renee is at too.
And it's just her learning tact, and she'll get that, and it will come. It's having sensitivity of how you're
when
giving
does it
out
come?
that
Because
information.
I'm in my 30s and I'm still learning.
Sometimes you still do not have tact. I agree.
Thank you.
But
it's true though.
But you have a lot more as you've gotten older, and your like empathy has like increased since like we were a child, obviously.
Yeah.
And you're able to listen to what the other person has to say and stuff. So you have learned that and continue. We all have our things for sure. Yeah. So the last thing we wanted to talk about today was
childhood memories that we have that we experienced that today would be like kind of taboo. Like you wouldn't do this.
You wouldn't do it. So I was thinking of, well, first actually, I was thinking of when my husband and his family were traveling out, I think to BC or something. And for Brian as a baby, they just stuck the playpen in the back of the vehicle. And that's where Brian just played the whole time. Like, I don't know how they fit it in. I don't know. But then I was also thinking of myself, I know my brother and I, and maybe this was just mom not doing what we're supposed to do, but it was a big deal back then. But we would both sit in the front seat. And like she would put the seatbelt over both of us. And we would both sit in the front seat. Or we had a Volkswagen and they had the seat in the very, very back. And sometimes, like, I think one of the vehicles may not even had a seatbelt. But yeah, there's like a seatbelt, like, and you were like so close and the trunks like open a little bit. Like it just,
crazy.
Like, wow. Like there was a lot of things that did back then.
Especially around vehicles. Like when you were saying that,
Yes.
It made me think of like my mom would often leave me in the car and go into the store. And
Yes.
like I'd be very little. I remember my dad would go into the bank and leave me listening to Adventures in Odyssey while he went to go do banking. And I'm like, I was like 9.
Yeah.
And I like,
Yeah.
that is crazy.
Well, and this shift to like, you think of, that's our childhood. But then like Bev watching my kids, and when they were babies, it was hard for her to be like, why do we need to do this? Because there was stuff that they just did not have to do. And you have such a swing and adjustment. She's always been great and gracious and everything. But it's just interesting to look back, and then there'll be things that we're doing and our kids will be like, why did they do that? That was so wrong. That was unsafe or whatever, you know? So.
Well, and we were talking about, I lived 10 blocks away from my school, and in about grade 4, I was walking myself to school, crossing Highway 2 and another extremely busy road. Like they run parallel through town. And so like by myself walking to school.
Yeah. And then home, and then wouldn't you be by yourself for a while?
Well, no, my dad would have been sleeping.
Oh, okay.
So I was by myself, but he was there, and I was always able to wake him up if I needed him.
What about on the days he was working, though?
And grandma's.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Who also lived about, I don't know, 7 blocks, and another busy road that way that I would have to walk back.
And now we think it's bad when the high school students have to walk. Remember, like I even thought of that. There's been like grade 9, I'm like, they have to walk like 2 kilometers or whatever it is, and
some of them though I do feel like they have to walk quite a
bit more.
Yeah,
but I think the bare minimum is 2 kilometers, which seems like if you're not,
it's definitely changed because where I lived at 10 blocks away from the school, I was supposed to ride the bus. But at that point, I'd already been walking to school since I was in 4th grade. And I looked at my teacher and was like, I haven't ridden the bus in like over 2 years. Why would I fill out this paperwork to ride the bus to the high school, which is right next door to my elementary school? I was like, I'll just walk. I'm good. Thank you.
That's very interesting.
And I would have had to walk like 8 blocks to
get the bus stop when you could do 10 blocks to the school.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love that.
So I was like, I'm
it's
good.
not happening.
No.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
But yeah.
And our time has gone already.
And that's that. I really enjoy this.
I'm really glad that I almost made you spew out your nose.
Oh, yeah. I felt it like right here.
That's exciting. On camera for the world to see. But we're so glad that you came and were with us and hung out again.
Yeah, leave us a note and tell us some of your childhood memories that you couldn't even imagine children of today doing.
Yes, please do.
That'd be a lot of fun. All right, well, we will see you next time.
Bye.